Hello there, my name's Scott. Today I'm going to be doing a review on the mini Hellfire repairable atomiser, which I purchased via the ukvapors.com forum. Now, unfortunately, these aren't readily available from a regular electronic cigarette website. You will need to go along to the forum, do a bit of a search for Hellfire, and that'll hopefully bring up the relevant threads, which will give you the information you need on how you can actually get hold of one. And the manufacturer of these is a guy called Hellfire. That's his forum username. So if you do see him on the forum, just drop him a PM, and then he should hopefully be able to tell you when some will be next available. Okay, so let's go straight ahead then and show you in a bit more detail and show you how I get it all set up. Okay, so the mini Hellfire is a Genesis style repairable atomiser. And this means it's going to use a stainless steel mesh wick to soak up e-liquid from the tank and then feed it up onto the heating coil. And as it is a repairable system, this means that you make up the coil or the heating element yourself. One thing I really like about it is that it's very easily broken down into its individual components. And this means when it comes to cleaning, it's a very simple process to do. So it's made up of these parts here, which include 2 O-rings, which will fit on either end of the tank, obviously to prevent leakage. The tank, I'm going to assume, is made out of a Pyrex material. And as you can see, it's a very, very thick tank, so it's going to be nice and strong. But it is quite a small tank as well, and it only holds around 1.2 mil of e-liquid. So you are going to be filling up fairly often, but it is a very quick process to actually fill the tank back up. You then have this like the central column here, and the one thing I really like about it is the 510 connection, which is actually built into the base. And as all these parts are made out of stainless steel, because the 510 connection is actually part of the base, it's going to be very nice and strong. You then have this cap here, and this is where your stainless steel mesh wick will run through the middle, and you've got these 2 screws on either side. And this means you can either have it as a dual wick setup, a single wick setup, or you can also have it using like a U-shaped wick. Me personally, I've been using the just like 1 wick, 1 coil, and it vapes absolutely perfectly. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this tutorial. And then you have the top cap here. And now this top cap, unlike others, doesn't screw on. It's actually like a push fit, and it's held very firmly in place. But the good thing about it is that because it's not a screw-in connection, this means that you can position the air hole wherever you like. And depending on where the air hole is in relation to the wick, that will affect how much vapour and throat heat you get. So it is you can adjust it to your own personal taste. And then finally, you get these 2 little metal pins, and these can be used to block up the holes depending on what configuration you're using. Okay, so now I'm just going to quickly show you how to assemble the mini Hellfire. Then once I've done that, we can move on to the next stage and show you a quick method of making up a stainless steel mesh wick, and then obviously wrapping up a coil. So the first thing you need to do is add one of the O-rings into the bottom of the base. And once you put the tank in there, that'll push that down nice and flat. And then I'll need to put another O-ring in this section here. So you just got to flip it over, and once again just place that in there. And then, like I said, once the tank gets put in, that'll push that down nice and flush. So now we have both O-rings in place. We can just take the tank, insert that, put the top on, screw that down. And that is pretty much it. All you'd have to do now is make up your stainless steel mesh wick and add a coil. Then you put your top on and then wait your drip tip in the end now. Okay, so let's go on to the next part then, and I'll show you a very quick method on making up a stainless steel mesh wick. Okay, so when I normally make my stainless steel mesh wicks, I go for a little bit of a ritual where I heat up the mesh in the flame till it glows red, and I quench it in water. Do that 3 times, and then I coat it in e-liquid, set it alight, and then do that 3 times as well. And on the video, it does come across as quite long-winded, even though it literally only takes a couple of minutes to do. So I've been trying to find a quicker method, just for the sake of doing these videos, really. And this way seems to work surprisingly well, actually. Now, literally all I'm going to be doing is just rolling up a nice tube, holding it in a very hot flame until it glows red, and just keep it glowing red in the flame for about 20 seconds. And that's pretty much it. I'm not bothering with quenching or anything like that. The only slight downside with that is that the edge of the mesh becomes quite brittle. You do get quite a few sort of little bits start sort of falling off basically. So the way to sort of counteract that is just to take one of the edges, fold it over, so it's like that, and that will just strengthen up that edge, and then spin it around and then start rolling up like this. So you want your edge to be the side that's going to overlap over the top. So once that's done, you just got to roll it between your fingers and thumbs and just keep doing this until it gets to a size where it's going to fit down the hole nice and not so well, so it's not too tight and not too loose basically. And once you've got the mesh all nicely rolled up, for me personally, I just like to take a pair of scissors and cut one end off at a 45-degree angle. And this will be the end that will go inside the tank. So it should look a little bit like that. Then for the next stage, I'm just going to use a pin to hold the stainless steel mesh wick, and then hold it in the flame until it glows red, and just keep it glowing red for around 20 seconds. You may need to work sort of one half at a time, so just concentrate on one half of the wick, again for around 20 seconds, and then just move on to the other half. And then you should end up with something that looks a little bit like this. Now I still do like to give it a good coating of e-liquid and just sort of set it alight and let it burn out naturally, because personally I do feel that it definitely helps with the like the wicking process. But normally I would do this 3 times, but again I'm just going to do it once. And like I said, just let it burn out naturally. And that's it, that is the wick fully completed. So we now just need to put the wick into the actual tank, and as you can hopefully see, I've inserted the end where I cut it at a 45-degree angle. So just push that down until it reaches the bottom. Now as you can see, my wick is overhanging quite a bit, and what I'll do is once I've put my coil on there, I'm just going to trim that off to size. Okay, so I've cut myself off a length of 0.20 gauge Canthal wire, and I've just cut off enough so it's just sort of, you know, I've got plenty enough to work with basically. So first we need to do is attach it to one of these screws, and obviously as I'm using the wick hole on this side, I'm going to use this bottom screw here. I'm just going to basically stretch it so it's going all the way across underneath the screw, and then bend it around so it's almost at a right angle. Take my screwdriver and just tighten that up. And now the wire is held firmly in place, I'm just going to put a little bit of tension on it and just start wrapping some coils. And you can just sort of hold it in place with your thumb whilst you're wrapping it. And then from there, normally I'd go straight into it here, but I'm going to go over the top and then back round, as for some reason it just seems to work a little bit better. And then once again, just take the screwdriver and just nip it up. So it should look hopefully a little bit like that. And I'm just going to sort out my coils and just make it look a little bit neater. Okay, so I've just tidied up the coils just to make sure that they're nice and evenly spaced. And we now need to get rid of these 2 wires. Now you can use a pair of cutters, but personally I just prefer to put a bit of tension on it, give it a bit of a twist, and it just gives you a very nice sort of clean break, as you can see. Okay, so I'm just going to fill up the tank with some e-liquid, and on the top here you've got this sort of small filling hole. Now it is obviously a lot quicker if you use something like a syringe, but you can also use it by just sort of pressing the bottle's nozzle against that hole and giving it a bit of a squeeze. So I'm just going to do that now. And that's it, tank's all full, so it's nice and easy and quick to do. And then finally, you just need to make sure that the coil's going to fire up nicely. Now I can see that the wick is already getting some nice capillary action going on, and it's already getting quite wet. But I'm just going to add some drops of juice to it first, just to sort of give it a bit of a boost. Let that soak in, and hopefully when I press the button we should get some vapour coming on. And that looks to be all good. Okay, so all that's needed to do now is to take one of the pins just to sort of block up the other hole there. And that's it. Now you can put another pin in that one, but personally I like to have a little bit of airflow, helps with the wicking side of things. And then you just got to take your cap and put your cap on top. Now I will say is make sure that you line up this hole so it's directly going in front of the wick there, and you'll get plenty of vapour. Okay, so that is the mini Hellfire. Let's go ahead and see what it vapes like. Okay, so that is the mini Hellfire. So what I do now then is go ahead and show you in action. I'm going to be using it on my Mini Pro Vari, which is currently set at 3.4 volts. The resistance of the coil is now reading 1.3 ohms. I've been giving it a good vape for the last sort of hour or so. And I've got the tank filled up with my favourite Titan tobacco flavoured e-liquid, which is 18 milligrams strength. And it's just like a regular sort of PG based e-liquid. As you can see, like vapour wise, it produces a really nice amount of vapour. But it's not just the like the mini Hellfire. I do find that all the Genesis style atomisers are very good for vapour production, and also very good for bringing out the flavour of your e-liquids as well, especially with the older tobacco flavours. If you like tobaccos like myself, then it really does give your tobacco flavours a very nice boost. And I'll just give you a quick tip whilst we're talking about vapour production. Now, I'm sure most people who've got one of these or other Genesis style atomisers probably know this already, but just in case. Basically, where you've got the air hole, like in the cap, if you have that position sort of right in front of the wick and the coil, you're going to get a lot more vapour production. Whereas if it's positioned sort of quite far away from it, you'll find that the flow hit increases greatly, but the actual amount of vapour you get will decrease quite dramatically. And I'll just sort of demonstrate that. So at the moment, I've just moved the air hole to like the opposite end of the where the wick and the coil is. And you can see, you're hardly getting any sort of vapour there, but you are getting a very strong flow hit. And now I'm just going to position it back to where it was, that's directly in front of the wick and the coil, just so you can sort of see the difference. And the difference between the two, is quite extraordinary, really. So if you did have to get hold of one of these and you're thinking to yourself, why am I getting such a strong throat hit but hardly any vapour? And just make sure that little tiny air hole is positioned right in front of the wick and the coil, and you should be sorted. Throat hit wise, I find all the Genesis style atomisers do give you a very good throat hit. But what I'm finding now with the mini Hellfire is that it's giving you a slightly even stronger throat hit than what my other Genesis style atomisers do, and I've got quite a few of them now. Not quite sure why that is, but I'm definitely getting a noticeably stronger throat hit out of the mini Hellfire. Now, in all honesty, there's not a great deal else I can sort of tell you really. It vapes very nice. It's extremely well built. I especially like the fact that the 510 connector is actually part of the base rather than being a separate 510 connector that's been sort of pushed into it, because that's obviously going to give it a lot more sort of added strength. And I do feel a lot more confident sort of carrying it around like in my pocket or in my car, getting knocked about, because I know that it's going to take a hell of a lot of a big whack before you actually sort of cause that any damage. Obviously, it has got a cap that sort of just sort of pops off and pops off, pops on and pops off, but it's on there firm and it's not going to go anywhere unless you actually sort of physically pull it off yourself. So again, I feel very confident carrying that around in my pocket. And the other good thing about having that cap just sort of pull off and pull it off and push on again is the fact that you can sort of position it wherever you like with regards to like the wick and the coil, so you can sort of adjust it to get your own sort of amount of throat hit and vapour production. Now, all in all, it's just a very nice repairable atomiser. He does also do a mega version, which is obviously slightly bigger, which will obviously have a bigger tank as well. But, you know, I really do like this size. You know, I have to sort of fill it up 3 times a day, maybe something like that, 3 or 4, depending on how much I'm vaping. But, you know, it literally is a case of pull the cap off, put the spike down, squeeze the bottle and put the cap back on. It literally takes like 10 seconds of your life. So it really is no big deal for me personally anyway. Okay then, so you know, if you fancy trying one of these out for yourself, like I said, you will need to either keep your eye out on the classified section on the various electronic cigarette forums, or go along to the ukvapers.com forum, do a bit of a search for Hellfire, and then hopefully you'll find the relevant threads which will give you the information you need. Thank you very much for watching, and also come along and visit my website at www.e-cig-reviews.com. That's e-cig-reviews.com. Cheers guys, happy vaping, see you later.